what you had just spoke here with the municipal level gets me into consolidating government and wasteful spending. On your website, you agree for the need to cut the size and cost of government at all levels, and as you just spoke now. For decades, governors have skirted the issue. In 1989, former Assembly Speaker Alan Karcher, who in his book, New Jersey's Multiple Municipal Madness, wrote that municipalities are creatures of the state and nothing more. Then in 2006, Speaker Roberts introduced the Core Reform Plan, and within the past 2 years, the Local Unit Alignment Reorganization and Consolidation Commission, LURAC, or LUARC rather, was set up to study ways to consolidate and merge local governments. This isn't the first time we've gone down this road. How will the Daggett administration successfully eliminate wasteful spending and implement shared services?
Well, we've talked a lot in New Jersey about consolidating government entities.
For years.
I've been around a long time, and we had 567 municipalities when I started getting involved in 1977 in public life in New Jersey. Today we have 566.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow I don't see that much of a victory. And the question is, how do we do that in the face of a very strong feeling about home rule and protecting the little communities that we have all over New Jersey? First, I think we have to take on the real cost structure of government. That's what's, it's not necessarily all the government units. That contributes to it, and particularly in the regulatory burden that I talked about. Mm-hmm. But it's just as important in the face of the strong feelings about local home rule to maybe say, you know what, it might not be worth that fight to force consolidation. Maybe what we ought to do is everything possible to encourage shared services, which is frankly occurring in a number of places. Counties are starting to talk about doing things like having their dispatchers not have a police dispatcher in every community, but somehow consolidating that county-wide, because with modern communications, you don't need a police dispatcher in every community. People talking about snow plowing, where county snow plow stops at a certain point, and then because it's no longer a county road, and now it's a local road, and then the local people have to pick it up. We've got to do those kinds of obvious measures, which I think, frankly, communities are doing, and we need to encourage that in a very significant way in New Jersey. But the idea of spending a lot of time on getting governments to consolidate by merging towns or merging a whole lot of school districts, I think looks good on paper and sounds good. I'm not sure it'll save as much money as it would if we do what I talked about earlier, which is getting all public employees and working with them to think about how we have reduced or leveled off salaries, greater contributions to healthcare and pension benefits, focusing on how we can do a number of things to continue to save money. That's the real issue. I'm not convinced that there is that much money, given the political effort it will take to even consolidate 5 or 10 more towns. If we were to do that, do we really have that much cost saving? I'd rather spend my energy dealing with the actual cost savings and what drives that than trying to force political entities to consolidate when it hasn't happened over the 30 years I've been involved. I think it's a very difficult issue.
Let's talk about unemployment and workforce development. With the state's unemployment rate hitting 9.2% at 26-year high, New Jersey has lost nearly 160,000 jobs. In Bayonne, our unemployment figures are higher than the county and state averages. We've hit the double digits. In addition, the workforce development system in the state is inefficient. For example, many of the unemployment offices in the state are still using dial-up connections, and the career resources being offered are extremely limited. At a time when their assistance is needed the most, what is your plan to fix the Department of Labor and get people working again?
Well, the first thing, in terms of getting people to work again, it's going to turn the economy around. It's not necessarily the workforce training programs that are holding it back. Our tax burden in New Jersey, our regulatory burden in New Jersey, any number of things that we do and are being, and some of the national economy issue obviously is a factor here as well. But those are the things that are stopping people from getting jobs. It's not necessarily job training programs. However, having said that, job training needs to be better linked to community colleges in particular. We've got a terrific community college system in New Jersey, and we ought to be figuring out how to continue to bolster that and use that for training people for the new economy, because the economy is going to turn around at some point. When it does, we're going to need well-trained people to do some of the jobs of the new economy, and those will be green jobs, high-tech jobs, biotech. It's not going to necessarily be the Wall Street jobs and the jobs that people have been in the financial sector and others, which has been long a big part of this state. We need to focus on training people for that new economy as things turn around. We need to focus on things like travel and tourism. We don't focus enough on travel and tourism, which is a source of an enormous number of jobs. It's the second or third largest industry in New Jersey, and we are not doing much at all by way of our budget process to encourage travel and tourism industry, and we ought to be doing things to train people for jobs in that industry as well. So we need to think through where's the economy going to be as we come out of the recession, what kinds of jobs are going to be available, and then start to tie our training programs at the high school level, at the county college level, and ultimately at the university level to that new economy. And I think that's most important. We can figure out what the, within the Department of Labor, I mean, that to me, we'll get to that and we'll make it more efficient. And if there's still a dial-up problem as opposed to using electronic media, then we need to take care of that. But that's not the real heart of the problem here.
Okay. And let's talk about education. Sure. The toughest, most important problems in our state are too often met with simple answers. Take our schools, for example. School taxes account for roughly 55% of local property taxes, yet our public education system is failing in far too many of our cities, suburbs, and in the rural parts of our state. For years, we've just thrown money into improving our education system, but with no real results. Just recently, a new school funding formula has been implemented. Do you think it addresses the problem, or how do you propose to change it?
Well, certainly the new school funding formula will help in the sense that there were a number of just outside urban areas, for example, school systems where people are really struggling financially, and this idea of having money follow the kid is certainly better than the system we've had now, where we're pouring billions of dollars into some of our so-called Abbott districts. But that's not the real issue in my mind. The real issue in terms of funding and education is the fact, are we getting the biggest bang for our buck? For many years we've said more equals better. But what we found out is that more doesn't equal better, because take a look at the results. If you go into our urban areas, too many kids are dropping out. The kids that are getting diplomas, too many of them are getting something called the SRA, which is the special review assessment, and that's how they get their diplomas. So what happens is they fail the high school proficiency assessment 3 times, and that makes them eligible to be considered under the SRA. The SRA is a very weak review and analysis of a student's abilities, and yet at the end of that process they can be given a high school diploma without any additional testing, without any really rigorous efforts to make sure that they understand math and science and English and writing and that sort of thing. And so what we do is we hand them a diploma, and then they go out and they get in the workforce, or they try to go in the workforce, or they try to go to college, community college or university, and people say, do you know how to write? And they say, well, not really. Do you know how to do math, and are you good with basic skills? Well, not so good. And so they then required to take remedial courses before they can even take a college course or to get a job. That is a moral issue. It's not an educational issue. The fact that we give these kids high school diplomas when they don't earn them, and we send a message to them that we think they're trained, and then they go out and find out we lied to them. I mean, that is wrong. It's wrong every way you look at it. So we've got to start to say, wait a second, we shouldn't be handing these kids diplomas, and we shouldn't be pretending that we're putting them through the system. So we've got to go back and say, what are we doing with all this money? What are we doing that we go generation after generation of children? So I support things like the Urban Enterprise Zone Scholarship Act, which the Black Ministers Council and a number of Hispanic groups and a number of other ethnic and urban groups have supported in New Jersey, which says if a kid is in a failing school district, that kid can tap into a fund and use that money to go to a charter school or some other school that gets them the education. So for me, the focus in education has got to be directed totally on the kid. How do we not let another generation of children go through our system and not be properly educated? And that to me is the biggest issue. How do you better spend the money? More does not equal better, and in the process my guess is we're going to find some efficiencies that we can and maybe save some money and get some property tax relief, because we don't need to spend the amount of dollars we're spending in some of these areas and still get a better result than we're getting.